Mark and Paulette here, the two travelers in Mexico. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about gentrification, and this was spurred on because of a recent comment on one of our videos. So we're going to talk about the effects of that today.
Yes, we are.
So gentrification, its definition is basically when wealthier people move into areas that don't have a lot of wealth, and then they cause prices like rent and other things to increase, forcing some people out of areas in which they grew up in. This occurs all over the world, basically, but we're just going to talk about it specifically with Mexico in mind.
Because we're living in Mexico, so why not?
Yeah. So there are, a lot of areas within Mexico that a lot of expats come to. As an example, San Miguel, Chapala, Ajijic, Puerto Vallarta, and places like that cause, the number of people move there, they cause the prices to rise, rents go up.
Oh, there's like Huatuco, Puerto Vallarta, Merida. I'm going blank right now.
Right. But places like that, and eventually, inevitably the prices on rent go up and things of that nature, and that unfortunately forces people out of areas that sometimes they grew up in. But it also happens that in places like Monterrey, which is
Mexico.
It's in Monterrey, Mexico, which is an area where a lot of rich Mexicans live, as an example. And so they are sort of gentrifying themselves in a way.
Right, because a lot of it has to do with, like Mark was saying, the richer, higher class Mexicans that are moving into these areas too. It's just not expats and foreigners that are creating this issue.
Right. So having said all of that, we sometimes get comments about gentrification on our videos. Not often, but it happens once in a while. We didn't move, as an example, we didn't move to Mexico because it was cheaper or anything like that, although it is ultimately cheaper.
It is. I mean, it saves us money, but that wasn't our reason for moving here, like Mark said. It was because we fell in love with Mexico. When we were here in 2018 looking for a place to retire, that's why we moved here.
Right. We could have afforded to live a lot of places in the United States.
Just not California on retirement.
California, where we came from. But we just elected to move to Mexico. Now, the city in which we live, San Luis Potosi, there aren't a lot of expats that live here. But, like you say, in the more highly populated expat communities, like we discussed before, gentrification is certainly happening in those areas.
Right. I mean, it may be happening here. I don't see it because the foreigner expat exchange is pretty low, like Mark said. So I don't really see it happening here. But like you said, in areas like Puerto Vallarta, Huatuco, Merida, I'm going blank on all the other ones because, Ajijic, Lake Chapala, areas like that that are known as expat communities, and that's where a lot of people move to.
And lately I've read on the different Facebook groups, even in Mexico City, gentrification is happening. Now that's not large, that's not because a lot of expats are moving there per se, but a lot of more well-to-do, wealthy Mexicans are moving there too. And it can create some animosity between people because, you never know. Someone could be saying something negative to you about it, even though you didn't do anything. But, you don't know their whole life story. They could have been affected by gentrification somehow.
Well, it's tough.
Some way.
It's tough, too, when you are affected by it because, you know what, you grew up there your whole life, and now it's like you're being pushed out of your own community because these other folks are moving in, causing higher prices in rent that now you can't afford, causing higher prices all around, because the community obviously knows that they could raise these prices and get it. Can the average Mexican that was living there all their lives maybe afford that? Maybe, maybe not. And I think that's where the animosity does come in.
Right, and I mean, I understand that point completely because put yourself in that situation. How would you feel if all of a sudden you were forced out of an area because you could no longer survive there financially? I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. However, having said that, almost every Mexican we've ever met has warmly greeted us. Thank you for coming to my country. Thank you for moving to my country. And it's all been genuine, I feel.
Yeah, I would say 95% that we come across are very welcoming, very kind, very inviting, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure that the other 5% or whatever the number might be, has a bad taste in their mouth. Maybe some were treated rudely by Americans. I mean, there are some Americans that do have an attitude coming to Mexico, that they are holier than thou, which isn't cool at all. Don't bring that with you. When you cross that border, leave that attitude at home.
Yeah.
But I think that does reflect in a lot of areas, a lot of ways. And, therefore the locals see one or two people acting that way, so that now they stereotype all Americans or all Canadians or all whatever, that they're all that way, right? Rude and obnoxious and whatever, thinking they're better than thou.
One of the things that we want to stress is that if you've had a negative experience with a Mexican or someone lives in your community, just be compassionate and forgiving, because you haven't lived, you haven't taken their walk in life, you haven't walked a mile in their shoes, and there may be some underlying factors involved there that weren't necessarily caused by you, but you were just on the receiving end of it.
Exactly, and when they come to know you for who you are, they'll let their guard down.
Yeah, yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to say is, I know a lot of people move abroad because when they hit those retirement years, they can't afford to live where they're living. And I can only speak for where Mark and I came from, because we lived there our whole lives or not all Sacramento, but in California for sure. And it is pretty pricey. And if you are thinking about retiring, I think in your between 60 and 65 in California, unless your mortgage is paid off, okay, and unless you had a pretty high paying job, probably 200,000 plus a year, I think that you're probably looking to retire abroad. I think those people that fit that category, which may be a slim category, I'm not real sure, but for the average Joe, the average Mark, the average Paulette, that was not in our cards to stay there at retirement. And yes, we could have stayed there until we were 65 when Medicare kicks in, but then you figure you have to keep working, right, for your medical. I mean, that's what most people rely on, is their jobs to pay for their medical. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like very many people are even full-time and have medical benefits anymore. But in our generation, that was the case. Your medical was paid by your employer, and that was a big factor. But, if you decide to retire between, say, 60 and 64, now you're pretty much on your own on paying for your private insurance, which can be very expensive.
Right.
In California, Mark and I are in pretty good health. We don't have any pre-existing conditions, so to speak of. And when we looked into getting private health insurance, it was about $700-800 each a month. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, if we were to retire and stay, now unfortunately for us, our mortgage was not paid. We we had moved, bought another house, and et cetera. But for the most part, people in their 60s, their mortgage usually paid off, so that's not an issue.
Yeah.
But when you think of all the other expense that go along with even living there, your utilities, your insurances, your property taxes, a lot of stuff, just day-to-day life is much more expensive there. Now, I got to say, living in Mexico, that was an extra benefit that we were really happy about. Like our utilities are hardly anything living in Mexico. For one thing, a lot of places, I won't say most, do not have central heat and air. They don't have the air conditioning. They don't have the heating. Mostly if you're going to find something, it's usually the air conditioning in really hot places where those utility bills might be a little bit more expensive on the electric for that.
Right.
But for the most part, I mean, our utilities are hardly anything at all. In the US, I know people that were paying up to $600 a month on utilities. That's really a lot of money when you think about it. So there are some extra benefits also living here. But again, that wasn't our reason for moving here. Our reason is we knew that we were going to move abroad, checked out a couple of places, came to Mexico, wanted to check it out, fell in love, absolutely fell in love. We knew that we had to be here.
Right.
Those other things are extra bonuses that come along with it. But we were not one of those people either that we're going to be living that upscaled kind of a life, building a home right on the beachfront, and what have you. That's not our lifestyle anyhow.
Yeah, we live, I mean, other than the fact I'm not working anymore, we live basically the same lifestyle here that we did in the US. I mean, obviously we have more time to travel, but we didn't really upgrade anything coming here by any means.
Right. The only difference is here, our mortgage is paid.
Right.
Because I think they're changing things up right now, but it was that when you were a foreigner coming here, that you basically had no credit and you had to do a wire transfer from your account in order to buy another home.
Right.
Mark and I had sold our house in Sacramento.
Right.
And so that cash that we had in the bank was used to buy this house, plus all the belongings that go inside of a house because we had to start all over again.
Right. But we live in San Luis Potosi, and I don't think gentrification is much of a factor here, at least caused by expats, because there just aren't many expats that live here. Now, there are many like professional working people that live here. In fact, they live in our community. So if there is any gentrification going on, it's just wealthier Mexicans coming here.
And I think that there are some wealthy people in San Luis. I can tell by the cars that I see on the road.
Yeah.
Lots of BMWs. There are some Mercedes. They do have some money here. There are new developments that are pretty expensive. What are some of them going for? Like 6 million or 7 million?
6 million
or
pesos, stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, which is about $400,000 or something.
350,000 US dollars.
Yeah, 400,000, something like that. That is not where we're at. Let me tell you that right now.
Right.
But I mean, there are wealthy people that are here, so I don't know, but most of them are moving to new communities. They're not really living in the average Joe kind of communities either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of companies relocate here from other countries,
like BMW
and stuff, and they typically house all of their foreign employees in certain areas, and they kind of stick to themselves.
Yeah, I don't even really
there.
see them. We've been here for a while.
I mean, is that contributing to some gentrification? Probably. But they are also providing jobs for Mexicans as well here. And so there's that benefit there. But I really just want to convey again, if you come across some negativity that seems to be, uncalled for, just show some compassion and stuff, because you never know. Like I said, you haven't walked in that person's shoes. You don't know what they've had to deal with. Maybe they had a negative confrontation with another expat or something like that, and that skewed their view.
Or they had to move out of their community because,
Yeah,
other people were moving in and they could no longer afford it. So that leaves a bad taste in their mouth. Maybe a lot of them were Americans or Canadians.
yeah.
I don't know.
Come to Mexico with an open mind and heart.
But, like talking about gentrification, it happens everywhere. I mean, it really does. And it saddens me that people always have to move out of their areas because of what's happening.
Right.
I mean, I saw it in the States where I grew up.
You would get developers come out and buy a whole bunch of houses, bulldoze them, and put in expensive condos and apartments and stuff like that. In the meantime, the people that were living there were maybe renting in something, and now they're put out. Now they have to find another place to live, possibly farther out from where their work is. Gentrification happens anywhere, and it's not just because expats are moving to a bunch of expats are moving to a specific community or communities here in Mexico, but that does increase gentrifications, at least somewhat.
Yeah. Now, the percentage of people that will really move abroad is probably small.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about it, they love that idea, but will they actually do it? Probably not. I know that statistics actually say that the percentage of people that actually move abroad within a couple of years will end up moving back due to, the customs of that country,
not learning the language,
food,
stuff like that.
Language, the way that things are handled. They were used to things being handled a certain way. Now they're in another country and it's totally upside down on the way that things are handled. I mean, Mark and I've experienced that many times.
Yeah.
Many times. But, you got to be open-minded to that sort of stuff too. A lot of them move back because they miss their friends and family. I totally get it. So there's a lot of reasons that it doesn't always work out well. I mean, kudos to those that try, though, for sure, on moving abroad.
Yeah.
But the percentage is small, and the percentage on statistics of moving back is a pretty high percentage.
High,
Yeah.
So if you have any thoughts about gentrification, leave them in the comments below. And we read the comments and respond to pretty much every comment that comes in. We'd love to know your thoughts on this topic and what you have to say. And if there's anything else in this topic you'd like us to cover in a little more detail, we'll be happy to do that too.
Or if gentrification has been your experience, has that happened wherever you live, in Canada, in the United States, in Mexico, and in other places too? I mean, other expat areas is like Portugal. I'm sure that they're experiencing that there. Panama, I'm sure that they're experiencing that there.
Ecuador.
Colombia. Thailand, the Philippines. There's a lot of areas where this is happening all over. Like I said, I mean, I grew up in the United States, in California, my whole life. And as I got older, a teenager and into my 20s, I saw it happening too, more and more.
Yeah.
It's a way of life. It's progressive life. I don't know what you want to call it. It's what happens, unfortunately. Fortunately and unfortunately, right? I mean, there's good and there's bad on it happening, but the bad is definitely those other people living in that area, born and raised there, that now have to figure out what they're going to do because they can no longer afford to live there.
Right. We get the fact that people move to Mexico for many, many different reasons. A lot of people move to Mexico because they just simply can't afford to retire in their home country.
Well, a lot of them
You know.
do on a tourist visa because they can't afford to come into Mexico on a temporary or a permanent visa because the financial amount goes up every year.
Yeah, that's what happened to our friend Buddy, who was in San Luis for 6 months, but unfortunately he couldn't qualify for a temporary or permanent visa, so we wound
And
up
this is
moving
when
to
things were
Thailand.
getting kind of tight, like where they weren't actually granting the 180-day tourist visa,
Yeah,
just to let you know.
so
So anyhow, it's a sad situation when that happens. It really is. But I think more and more people now are going back to the tourist visa because they're being more lenient again
yeah,
on giving the 180 days. They just got to cross the border every 180 days and come back.
yeah,
Those are the ones I think that actually have the love for Mexico.
mm-hmm.
Is there a small percentage though that only move to Mexico and other countries because they have no other choice with their finances? Yeah, absolutely there is.
Yeah,
And it's a sad situation.
yeah. Maybe they've had a job that didn't pay a lot of money, or they don't have a lot contributed into Social Security and no pension plan, and so those people are forced to move to another country to survive. We get that. We completely understand
Oh
that,
yeah.
and we've known people that have had to do it. It's a sad situation, but in the end, you got to do what you can do to survive. I mean,
And I've told Mark, this is a funny joke. I told him that if he didn't come into my life, I probably would have been a bag lady living out of a shopping cart.
see, you heard that, America, or wherever you're listening from. I saved her from bag ladydom.
Just kidding, but that's a joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just wanted to do a video on this to kind of touch on that, get your feedback, see what you guys think. Like Mark said, leave a comment. And one other thing that I wanted to say is, Mark and I do the YouTube channel. There's other YouTubers out there that talk about Mexico. Are we contributing to gentrification? Probably. We don't mean to. We just try to share with those that want to visit Mexico on how we feel about it, our experiences, for those that want to learn more, for those that are considering retiring here. But by no means are we putting out these videos for gentrification in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to make that clear to you guys. And if you guys do like what we're doing, the videos that we bring you, the information that we share, we hope that you will consider subscribing to our channel.
And as always, hit the like button and all that stuff.
Oh, I was going to say, as always, from the two travelers in Mexico.
There you go. What she did.
Bye, guys.
Bye.